There we go. This classic shot. Yeah, by any accounts, this planet of ours is a miracle. Such mystery and beauty. This rock whizzing through the great expanse of the universe. Luckily for us, it is a juicy rock, one with orca whales, giant sequoias, hummingbirds, and Beyonce. What do you love about this precious gem? I believe love is the fuel behind our activism. When I was around 4 years old, it was a bird that sparked my activism. I cried about the DDT that was killing the majestic bald eagle. And that's when my journey as an activist began. Each of you may have a similar moment or spark in your life. Just a few shots from growing up. Strap-on roller skates. I don't know how many of you got to experience that. Metal wheels on pavement. Not a lot of fun, but we may do. Spent 5 years in Japan. And here's a shot from when we were about to move to Louisville from San Francisco. And a few of my family members and mentors. And a big shout out for Adrienne Marie Brown. Hopefully you've come across her work. Emergent Strategy is an amazing workbook guide. And she's also written Pleasure Activism, and you can catch her on the How to Survive the End of the World podcast. Some of the things in this presentation use some of the great lessons in her book, Emergent Strategy. My sons, nephews, and nieces are my inspiration to keep going. And there's my spring garden, at least the part in the back. And then the summer garden. My nuclear family and the extended family. And here is my work family, picture from a few years ago at the hunger program, where we tried to alleviate hunger and also eliminate its causes. There we go. And just if we could pause for a second, it's been a rough number of years, and just to recognize the losses, the struggles, the suffering, the grief, and the anxiety that all of us are feeling in different ways. So I invite you to close your eyes just for a second and just take 2 or 3 long breaths. It may have been a long day. Or if you don't want to close your eyes, you can look at this lovely grove of trees. And so a quick outline of our time together tonight. We've already breathed together. You can keep doing that if you like. We'll look at our thesis of changing the food. How we do food can help save the climate movement. And then we'll talk about octopi a bit and get into other things like assisting migration, perhaps land if we have time, and movement building, and make sure we save time for discussion, dialogue, and Q&A as well. So here we go. So food and climate are closely related. Already global warming is challenging our ability to grow food well. Floods, droughts, fires, and extreme weather patterns are messing with food production around the world, and these will only increase. Go ahead to the next one, Mindy. Food production, especially conventional chemical agriculture, tremendously contributes to climate change. Fortunately, improvements in how we do food and how we use land can make huge contributions to solving our climate crisis. Given the conditions of our politics and our planet and how easily it seems that despair or apathy can arise, besides working for change, I believe that part of our work is to encourage each other, to strengthen our solidarity and our connections, and to find hope in the steps we take, individually and collectively. The dominant food system we have created is like an iceberg. The visible part is the unhealthy processed crap our food system pushes on us and the health impacts of that. But beneath the surface, the industrial food system has these other disturbing effects. And the human costs are extreme. When land is used to produce fuel for vehicles rather than for hungry people, and health disparities largely caused by our diets and the stress of poverty, yeah, you can go to the next one, mean that someone in a neighborhood on the west side of Louisville, where the majority are Black, will die 12 years sooner on average than someone living on the east side, where the majority are white. I am asserting that doing food differently can save the climate movement, because I truly believe that changing our food system toward food sovereignty will reduce racism, exploitation, misery, and environmental harm overall. The climate movement must incorporate and embrace food, seed, and land sovereignty, as well as in environmental justice and climate justice if we are to succeed. Okay, first, a definition. What is food sovereignty? So food sovereignty is a systems approach to healing our food and farm system by attending to the ways we produce food and who within the system has the power to make decisions. It is people's right to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and their right to define their own food and agriculture systems. And it increases the power and agency of producers, workers, and consumers, who are the majority of people on the planet, rather than corporations, which is the current reality. A core part of humanity's disease is separation. Separation from the earth, from nature, and from each other. Food can be an antidote. Food is the great connector. It connects us to our bodies, to other humans, to the soil, water, and sun, to cycles of nature, to the source of life itself, and to these many systems you see before you. So when considering climate change and food systems, there are, of course, so many issues and interrelated connections that it can be difficult to figure out where to start and not to get lost once you're going. But if you and I are grounded in values and principles, these can guide us on the path, and we can find where we have common ground and common purpose. Consciousness is changing. Our relationship to nature is in the midst of a massive shift toward an understanding that indigenous people and some civilizations have had for millennia. Simply stated, it is that humans are part and parcel of nature. The environment is in us, not outside of us. The trees are our lungs, the rivers are bloodstream. We are all interconnected. And what you do to the environment, ultimately you do to yourself. Sorry. Now let's take a few minutes to think about our values and principles around food and farming. Please put a word or phrase that represents a value you hold about food. You can put those in the chat, and we'll put those up on a Google slide right now, hopefully. Okay, 1 second, it'll be there in a sec. And if you're Google literate, you can go right into this slide and not see this, but see this. Okay. Hopefully it's up there now. So we will put that link in the chat right now. And bop into there and write in some values that you hold around food, if you can get in there, or just put it in the chat and we'll put it in there. So we'll take a few minutes just to populate that. Lots of great stuff coming into the chat. See if anyone can get into Google and try to put it in there as well. Got justice, nourishing, nutrition, homegrown and shared. Let's see if I can help out there. Locally sourced, sustainable, waste not, waste not, want not. Let's see, sourced, sustainable. We've got different columns too, if you want to see if we can get some in. There we go, shared. Put that in our access box. Social justice, thank you, Jeannie. Good to see you, Jeannie. Joy, I like that, Azhar. Let's put that in economic, just since we don't have any in economic right now. And our economics should be more joyful. Essential, healthful, local, yes, healthy, colorful, all right. Let's put that in economics too, need more color in our economics. How about in labor? I guess we've got some of those that fit there, right? Social justice, healthful, great. Feel free to keep popping things in there. Family farms versus industrial farm. I'm thinking, knowing Karen, you mean shifting in that direction. Where would be a good place? Maybe factory farms, yeah, animal farming. Great. Okay. We'll jump back to the, feel free to keep putting stuff in the chat if you want. I hope this chat will be a resource for us all. And we can go back to the presentation if I stop sharing. Thank you all for that. So we'll go down to about slide 32, I guess. Yeah. So finding common ground allows us to formulate our individual and our collective strategies and action through that values grounding, right? And this approach also provides the foundation for dialogue with others who may not think like us. So yeah, we could go to slide 33, Mindy, when you can get that up.
Yeah, sorry, I accidentally closed the whole thing. It's coming.
No problem.
I clicked too many X's. All right, 30.
So doing food differently will save the climate movement. That was the title I started out with. Let's go a little less audacious. Let's call it doing food differently can save the climate movement. But save it from what? So it can save it from reductive thinking and the kind of actions that have led us into the crises we are facing. Related to this, it can save us from the mistake of trying to use the master's tools to dismantle the master's house. One of the master's tools that we all use is fossil fuels. While substituting fossil fuels with renewable energy sources is definitely a step in the right direction, even 100% success in this regard leaves the master's house intact. Curbing.
Am I on the wrong slide? Am I on the wrong slide? I'm sorry, Andrew.
I think that one's pretty, is that like 33? Yeah, I think it's.
It's just being slow on me right now.
That's perfect. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
So yeah, reducing energy use, especially by heavy users like us in the US, not only substituting energy sources, is of course critical to avoiding the worst impacts of the climate crisis. If our economy stays committed to perpetual growth, and you can go to the next slide, yeah, when you have a chance. We remain, unfortunately, on the path to ruin. Extractive capitalism and the growth model is the primary reason we are in this mess. And other ways of running our economies are needed to be in our new toolbox. So how are we doing food now? Unfortunately, it's grounded in a deep history of slavery and theft of land from indigenous peoples. And not to mention the racist politics, the promises of distributing land to Black, indigenous people of color never came through. Decades of USDA, Department of Agriculture discrimination against Black farmers has continued. You can keep going, Mindy. And corporate capture is what we're dealing with now. Oligopolies that are so powerful that they write the policies that perpetuate this system. And an economic system that rewards those who have the most with massive accumulation of wealth and therefore influence. So the people who have cared for the land, Native Americans, agroecological family farmers, have been removed or bankrupted. The people who work the land don't own it. 98% of farmland is owned by white people. A lot of this being large landholders and corporations. And the workers in that food chain, in that food supply, the majority who are people of color are often hungry, scapegoated, and harassed. And here, when you click, are just some statistics that show the situation of farm workers in the US. You see roughly half are food insecure, and the irony and tragedy of that is clear. So let's take the United States and focus a little bit on animal agriculture for a minute. Over 95% of our beef is made in factory farms and mass produced for domestic consumption and for export. And 80% of the US meatpacking industry is controlled by just 4 multinational corporations, removing fair competition from this picture. The global perspective is even worse. 1/3 of all emissions Hold on a sec, there we go. 1/3 of all emissions come from agriculture and related land use. Think about cattle in Brazil, grazed on once forested land, and then all the palm, sugar, and soy plantations covering huge parcels around the world. So understanding systems allows us to understand the scope and urgency of the multiple crises we face. And we are facing a lot. This is kind of the theory of change that I use in the hunger program, and some of us use, making these connections between the food, land, economic, and environmental justice systems around racism and poverty being key to eliminate if we are to address these problems well. Go ahead, Mindy, keep clicking. And to build that beloved community. Key to that, of course, is to building a policy environment that allows alternatives to happen and flourish, and also resist the negatives in the current policies. And key to that, to all of this, is recentering BIPOC voices, the people who are closest to the problems, and building their power through movement building to be able to make that kind of systemic change that we need. Thanks. So understanding the food system and analyzing the power dynamics allows us to strategize around weaknesses in the harmful systems and to make changes that will benefit people in the short term and strengthen the climate justice movement. So how does doing food differently set up the climate movement for success? As we've said, the interrelated nature of food gets us thinking less like we were taught to think in school, and more like a tree in nature, considering the relationships within the whole system. Maybe we need to think of our planet not like a house or machine, but like the multifaceted ecosystem it is. There are no parts in nature, only participants. With this new view, we strive for diversity, healthy relationships, and harmony. Hopefully you've read the slide here. I mean, just amazing considering the soil, how much is going on there. Oh, there it is, yeah. The top meter, and thanks to David for this beautiful slide. The top meter of the world's soils contains 3 times as much carbon as the entire atmosphere, making it a major carbon sink alongside forests and oceans. So take a clump of grass in a pasture. It soaks up nitrogen from the air, water from the clouds, and it converts energy from sunlight. And then the grass exudes sugar from its roots, and millions of bacteria, billions of bacteria, fungi, nematodes, all feed on the sugars and each other. And those are eaten by bigger critters like protozoa and arthropods, which feed the insects, which then the chicken eats. The chicken lays the eggs you fry, you digest and transform that into the skin, blood, muscles, and brain cells that you're using right now. In a best case scenario, the pasture is protected within a community land trust that will remain as farmland permanently. The land is cared for and managed by a diverse group of intergenerational farmers, as it is in the agrarian commons that Agrarian Trust is getting established in 10 states around the country. The eggs can then be sold directly to eaters through community-supported agriculture, farmers markets, or to a nearby community grocery. Ideally a food cooperative, which is owned by the co-op members and whose profits circulate within that town, with any surplus going where the member owners decide it should go. In Louisville's case, eggs can also go to fresh stop markets run by New Roots, where people have paid for their share and receive a bountiful bag of organically grown produce and eggs if they want them. They source their food from local farms, urban farms, and farms surrounding Louisville. The transportation and energy use is minimal. The producers earn a livable wage, and the food is surprisingly affordable. New Roots understands how unhealthy and inaccessible local organic food is, and they've created a parallel alternative system. These models are real and they are succeeding in places around our country and the world. New Roots is a great example of food sovereignty at that local level, where a small group is creating a virtuous alternative food system linking farmers directly to people needing affordable, healthy food. Okay, let's switch gears for a minute and go one more slide. I invite you to put into the chat again, or go to this short form, and I'll put it in the chat right now, not to Jeannie, but to everyone. There. Yeah, go there if you want to just fill out the form, and it's really just a question or two. But it gives you a chance to name an initiative in which you are familiar or involved with that you believe is trying to address the systems that create these problems, or one that is building alternatives using new tools. And we'll try to get to a couple of those during the final 15 minutes. And it'll be great to know about them in any case, and we'll share this resource with you on that registration page that you used. So yeah, I want to see that chat just blowing up with things that you have familiarity with that are trying to address the systems. We've got Kiss the Ground. Yeah, great movie that you can watch online that highlights some of those examples. So yeah, put into the chat just examples you think that exemplify that, and we'll go back to those during the dialogue session. Stopping food waste, yeah, good from Food Shift. It's a great listserv to get on. Community gardens and gardeners markets, yeah, market gardens and such. So it is great to see those coming in. Tewa Women United, yes, thank you, Lynn. Lynn, I think, preached about them, a great group in Albuquerque, I'm sorry, in Española, New Mexico. So very encouraging to encourage each other with all these great examples. And it's great to hear about all the innovative and beautiful alternatives. But as New Roots and others find, it is very tough to create and sustain them when they are not supported and incentivized like the conventional dominant models are. So therefore, we must both resist and build. As the Climate Justice Alliance puts it, we must fight the bad and build the good. And we must address economics, or we will get nowhere. Go ahead, Mindy, to the next slide when you have a chance. Climate Justice Alliance has done much to advance the concept and practices of just transition. And this, yeah, you can keep it on the just transition slide. Thanks. Go back up a couple. So just transition is a great concept that came out of the transition from coal economy to make sure that the workers were well trained and kind of empowered to get good paying jobs as mines closed up, et cetera. but it means a lot more now, and it's a great concept for all of us to learn about and advance. It's basically about decentralizing the decision-making and economic activity and centering the voices, leadership, and power of those in frontline communities, people of color and others marginalized in our systems, and to create models and systems based on renewable energy, justice and sustainability, care for the most vulnerable, and protection of the commons and the common good. We can take heart that our work to change how we do food and agriculture, even the small gains, and there's now dozens in the chat, even those small gains can help us solve the many related problems. That positive changes to our local food system, for example, keep farmers around our towns and cities solvent, keeps them on their farms, gives people more access to healthier food and better lives, provides better paying and more dignified jobs for workers, reduces the harm from pandemics, repairs our ecosystems and reduces extinctions, and reduces poverty and hunger. The models and solutions are already out there. Cooperatives, mutual aid initiatives that sprang up within weeks after the pandemic all over the country and started to feed thousands of people, like Feed the West here in Louisville. Black-owned independent groceries, Black Soil Kentucky, which supports and promotes Kentucky's Black farmers, and urban farms like Fifth Element Farm. And hopefully Mariel Gardner, who is pictured here with her partner, Michael George, is on and would be willing to say talk for a couple minutes about Fifth Element Farms.
Hey, Andrew, thank you. So my name is Mariel, and I, along with my friend Michael, operate Fifth Element Farms, also known as Apocalyptic Acres in the Parkland neighborhood of Louisville. We transformed a vacant lot into a farm complete with a greenhouse, water catchment system, pollinator garden, and bees. We started growing in March of 2020 with entrepreneurial pursuits, but the pandemic made us shift focus. Food access is and was terrible in our neighborhood, and we knew the pandemic would only make things worse. So we decided to share our yield with our neighbors free of charge. We try to grow about 300 pounds of food during the growing season, and we're slowly expanding our operation to grow more. Our goals have changed a lot over the past few years. We advocate for land access for Black people through our work with food in neighborhoods. We get young people interested in growing through our work with Food Literacy Project, and we hope our little farm combats the pollution emitted from the chemical companies in our neighborhood. And we also hope it helps to end food apartheid in Louisville. Michael and I are modeling the future we want to see by taking back our agency and providing for ourselves and our neighbors like humans used to before we became greedy little capitalists. Relationships are most important to us, whether that's our relationship to the land, to food, or to the many friends we've met along the way.
Thank you so much, Mariel. And maybe folks will have questions for you as well in the Q&A time. So let's go to the next slide, and I'll skip some stuff so we can make sure we have enough time for everything. So yeah, there's an octopus. Okay, so we who do treasure each other and the beauty and sacredness of our planet are being called to address the crises in multiple ways. But you must remember, you need not and cannot do it all. Each of us has interests, maybe even passions, and we can offer our gifts of time, talent, and treasure and do our part. It takes a village. Granted, on many days, it sure seems like the village won't be enough. The crises are so many and so complex. It seems we need some kind of octopus superhero. Oh, if you haven't yet seen it, I highly recommend My Octopus Teacher. Fabulous. And let's stay with octopi for a bit. The neurons in an octopus are decentralized. Each of its 8 limbs can perceive, consider stimuli, and react independently. Social movements are like that. Mass movements of people with overlapping interests that strive to create life-affirming changes to the status quo. There's no vanguard like a brain at the top of the body. Rather, the wisdom is spread throughout the many arms of the movement. Working collectively, we are the octopus superhero, strengthening a movement. We can take heart because solutions abound. Some are hidden below our feet. Lisa and David, who is with us today, and other agroecological or regenerative farmers are showing the way with zero emission post-petroleum approaches to agriculture, with a focus on soil health. And when we care for the soil, it cares for us. One unique challenge we face as the planet warms is the inability of trees to walk. Oh, forgot we had these wonderful slides of the intercropping and the crop rotation that they do on their just under 1 acre of produced land that they use for actual vegetables. But you can see some of that in these slides. Go ahead to the next one, Mindy. And the next one. And those are David's great slides. So yeah, the inability of trees to walk, since we don't have Ents in this level of our Earth. So animals and plants need to migrate north as the planet heats, but we're wiping out the pollinators, the insects, birds, and other animals who spread the seeds. So we must stop ecosystem destruction and slow global warming, but also assist with the process. And David, wondering if you could come off mute and briefly describe what this initiative looks like in Minnesota, and then we'll watch a 2-minute video that I'll put up of one of the participating farmers.
Yeah, so what we're looking at is our Northwoods, which is the northern lungs of the United States, is habitat for wolves and moose and all these wildlife that depend on the forest, as do we. And what this is about is democratizing the process of getting tree seedlings to create a resilient forest that will live on, because the forecast is for our forest to be gone within 50 years with climate change. So we're building the parts of the system, and what you'll see in the video is a group of farmers that we've developed to grow these climate forward tree seedlings that then are planted and will become the seeds of the future forest.
Fabulous. Thank you, David. And here's that 2-minute video. Share soon, optimize. Hopefully this will work. And get that out of the way so I can press play.
I come alive when I am in the forest. Those trees out there become almost like old friends. But because of climate change, northern Minnesota is warming up quickly and the forest is dying. It's really hard to see. My name is Cree Bradley. I run Chelsea Morning Farm with my husband, Jason. We love to grow things, plain and true, and we love trees. And so when this forest-assisted migration project came about, we were so compelled to get involved in it.
The Forest Assisted Migration Project is where farmers grow climate-smart trees that we can then plant in northern Minnesota so they'll survive as climate changes around them.
The University of Minnesota Duluth distributed the seeds to us. These species, white pine and red oak, are the same species that are growing here, but these seeds have come from an area just south of this region where they're adapted to be growing in slightly warmer temperatures. Trees do an amazing job at sequestering and absorbing carbon, and so it seems very much logical that we would look to nature as part of a solution towards climate change.
As part of the project, the Nature Conservancy and other partners will buy 40,000 trees and use them in their restoration efforts.
We are small growers, and it takes a lot of capacity to take on an enterprise like this. It is a financial risk, and to know we have an end outlet for the trees, that's really exciting. It's such a huge problem we face, climate change, and we need big solutions. There's no question about that. I think if we can all step up our role and do more, we will make a difference. But it's going to take everyone. My hope for these trees is that some of them survive and become really big relics someday, long into the future, long after we're gone.
Nowadays, even in the United States, people are realizing that our varied struggles for life against racism and white supremacy, for fairness and equal opportunities, for labor rights, housing rights, for food justice, for peace, and for ecological health and climate justice, that these struggles are interconnected. And we must organize more and strengthen our connections and our solidarity. The power of the people working together collectively is a beautiful thing. Here in New Mexico and in Puerto Rico, an amazing revival of agroecological farming and food sovereignty. Many of this being pushed forward by young adults who are doing amazing things, training each other, starting new farms, and so on. So yes, we must encourage each other and do the discipline of hope. And even if our motivation is just to encourage ourselves, that's fine too. I believe that we can win. And as Assata Shakur says, it is our duty to win. It is our duty to fight. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. Yes, we must love each other and support each other. We need each other. We need the support, warmth, and love of each other. Love and compassion may not necessarily bring victory in particular fights, but I know of no other approach that gets us where we need to go in the long run. So let us bind together collectively as octopus, the movement octopus, and each of us can be individual suckers, suckers for love and suckers for climate justice. Here are 11 ways to be a good sucker. Learn the real history, become aware of your filters, be open to different views and people, do inner work, practice gratitude, forgiveness, self-care, or other spiritual practices. Breathe and be present to self and others. Show up authentically. Center relationships. Listen deeply, speak intentionally. Know that other struggles are your struggles. Together, we will become free. and make sure you're taking the lead from those who are directly affected. Live the world you long for and move at the speed of trust. Finally, here are just a summary of the points from this presentation, and then we'll go into questions and answers. So to save the climate movement and our planet, here are 6 overarching goals, each of which uses alternative tools. So in the economy, we need to shift away from the growth model to a steady state economic system based on cooperation, solidarity, public commons, sustainability, and equity. This economy needs to be non-extractive. We need to halt the extraction and use of fossil fuels and reduce the harm from other mining and polluting industries. And this includes the extraction of labor from people, as well as topsoil, agricultural nutrients, and water. We need to carry out reparations, finally, after way too long, to stop the accumulation and privatization of public goods and redistribute land, wealth, and opportunities. For food justice, to build equitable and sustainable food economies everywhere, from your neighborhoods to regional food sheds and nations. This requires scaling out agroecology and the realization of food sovereignty. Land justice, ensure that farmland and other land is used equitably and sustainably. And this entails ownership or long-term tenure by farmers and producers committed to agroecological production, as well as the creation and expansion of land trusts, which can play a key role in agriculture, housing, and other community enhancing endeavors. And solidarity, support with our time, talent, and treasure groups that are working toward these goals. Form new groups, coalitions, and alliances, and build movements across sectoral and national boundaries.